The Secret Doctrine by Elena Petrovna Blavatsky, a facsimile of the original edition of 1888, printed by the Cunningham Press, Alhambra, California. Book 2, Part 1, Anthropogenesis, stanzas translated with commentaries, from the Secret Book of John.
Stanza 4, verse 16. How are the real Manushyas born? The Manus with minds, how are they made? Here an explanation again becomes necessary in the light and with the help of the exoteric added to the esoteric scriptures. The Manushyas, men, and the Manus are here equivalent to the Chaldean Adam, this term not meaning at all the first man, as with the Jews, or one solitary individual, but mankind collectively, as with the Chaldeans and Assyrians. It is the 4 orders or classes of Jankochams, out of the 7, says the commentary, who were the progenitors of the concealed man, that is, the subtle inner man. The law of the moon, the lunar spirits, were, as already stated, only the ancestors of his form, that is, the model according to which nature began her external work upon him. Thus primitive man was, when he appeared, only a senseless Bhuta or a phantom. This creation was a failure, the reason of which will be explained in commentary on Sloka 20. Note on Bhuta. It is not clear why Bhutas should be rendered by the Orientalists as meaning evil spirits in the Puranas. In the Vishnu Purana, Book 1, Chapter 5, the Sloka simply says, Bhutas, fiends, frightful from being monkey-colored and carnivorous. And the word in India now means ghosts, ethereal or astral phantoms, while in esoteric teaching it means elementary substances, something made of attenuated non-compound essence, and, specifically, the astral double of any man or animal. In this case, these primitive men are the doubles of the first ethereal Dhyanis or Pitris. End of note. Verse 16 continues. The fathers, within brackets and question mark, Barishad, called to their help their own fire, the Kavyavahana, electric fire, which is the fire which burns in earth. The spirit of the earth called to his help the solar fire, Suki, the spirit in the sun. These 3, the Pitris and the 2 fires, produced in their joint efforts a good Rupa. It, the form, could stand, walk, run, recline, and fly. Yet it was still but a chaya, a shadow with no sense. This attempt was again a failure. It allegorizes the vanity of physical nature's unaided attempts to construct even a perfect animal, let alone man. For the fathers, the lower angels, are all nature spirits, and the higher elementals also possess an intelligence of their own, but this is not enough to construct a thinking man. Living fire was needed, that fire which gives the human mind its self-perception and self-consciousness, or manas, and the progeny of Parvaka and Suki are the animal, electric, and solar fires which create animals, and could thus furnish but a physical living constitution to that first astral model of man. The first creators, then, were the Pygmalions of the primeval man. They failed to animate the statue intellectually. This stanza, we shall see, is very suggestive. It explains the mystery of and fills the gap between the informing principle in man, the higher self or human monad, and the animal monad, both one and the same, although the former is endowed with divine intelligence, the latter with instinctual faculty alone. How is the difference to be explained and the presence of that higher self in man accounted for? The sons of Mahat are the quickeners of the human plant. They are the waters falling upon the arid soil of latent fire, and the spark that vivifies the human animal. They are the lords of spiritual life eternal. In the beginning, in the second race, some of the lords only breathed of their essence into Manushya, men, and some took in man their abode. Unquote. This shows that not all men became incarnations of the divine rebels, but only a few among them. The remainder had their 5th principle simply quickened by the spark thrown into it, which accounts for the great difference between the intellectual capacities of men and races. Had not the son of Mahat, speaking allegorically, skipped the intermediate worlds in their impulse toward intellectual freedom, the animal man would never have been able to reach upward from this earth and again through self-exertion his ultimate goal. The cyclic pilgrimage would have to be performed through all the planes of existence half unconsciously, if not entirely so, as in the case of the animals. It is owing to this rebellion of intellectual life against the morbid inactivity of pure spirit that we are what we are, self-conscious, thinking men, with the capabilities and attributes of gods in us, for good as much as for evil. Hence the rebels are our saviors. Let the philosopher ponder well over this, and more than one mystery will become clear to him. It is only by the attractive force of the contrasts that the two opposites, spirit and matter, can be cemented on earth, and, smelted in the fire of self-conscious experience and suffering, find themselves wedded in eternity. This will reveal the meaning of many hitherto incomprehensible allegories, foolishly called fables. Vid infra, the secret of Satan. It explains, to begin with, the statement made in Pimander that the heavenly man, the son of the Father, who partook of the nature and essence of the seven governors, or creators and rulers of the material world, peeped through the harmony and, breaking through the seven circles of fire, made manifest the downward-born nature. See Pimander, Book 2, verses 17 to 29. It explains every verse in that Hermetic narrative, as also the Greek allegory of Prometheus. Most important of all, it explains the many allegorical accounts about the wars in heaven, including that of Revelation with respect to the Christian dogma of the fallen angels. It explains the rebellion of the oldest and highest angels, and the meaning of their being cast down from heaven into the depths of hell, that is, matter. It even solves the recent perplexity of the Assyriologists, who expressed their wonder through the late George Smith. Quote, "My first idea of this part of the rebellion," he says, "was that the wars with the powers of evil preceded the creation. I now think it followed the account of the fall." Chaldean Account of Genesis, page 92. In this work, Mr. George Smith gives an engraving from an early Babylonian cylinder of the sacred tree, the serpent, man and woman. The tree has 7 branches, 3 on the man's side, 4 on that of the female. These branches are typical of the 7 root races, in the third of which, at its very close, occurred the separation of the sexes and the so-called fall into generation. The 3 earliest races were sexless, then hermaphrodite, the other 4 male and female, as distinct from each other. The dragon, says Mr. G. Smith, which, in the Chaldean account of the creation leads man to sin, is the creation of Tiamat, the living principle of the sea, or chaos, which was opposed to the deities at the creation of the world. This is an error. The dragon is the male principle, or phallus personified, or rather animalized, and Tiamat, the embodiment of the spirit of chaos, of the deep, or abyss, is the female principle, the womb. The spirit of chaos and disorder refers to the mental perturbation which it led to. It is the sensual, attractive, magnetic principle which fascinates and seduces, the ever-living active element which throws the whole world into disorder, chaos, and sin. The serpent seduces the woman, but it is the latter who seduces man, and both are included in the karmic curse, though only as a natural result of the cause produced. Says George Smith, "It is clear that the dragon is included in the curse of the fall, and that the gods, the Elohim, jealous at seeing the man of clay becoming a creator in his turn, like all the animals, invoke on the head of the human race all the evils which afflict humanity. Wisdom and knowledge shall injure him. He shall have family quarrels. He will anger the gods. He shall submit to tyranny. He shall be disappointed in his desires. He shall pour out useless prayers. He shall commit future sin." No doubt subsequent lines continue this topic, but again our narrative is broken, and it reopens only where the gods are preparing for war with the powers of evil, which are led by Tiamat, the woman. from Babylonian Legend of Creation, page 92. This account is omitted in Genesis for monotheistic purposes, but it is a mistaken policy, born no doubt of fear and regard for dogmatic religion and its superstitions, to have sought to restore the Chaldean fragments by Genesis, whereas it is the latter, far younger than any of the fragments, which ought to be explained by the former. Verse 17. The breath, human monad, needed a form. The fathers gave it. The breath needed a gross body. The earth molded it. The breath needed the spirit of life. The solar laws breathed it into its form. The breath needed a mirror of its body, an astral shadow. We gave it our own, said the Dhyanis. The breath needed a vehicle of desires, Kamarupa. It has it, said the drainer of waters, Sukhi, the fire of passions and animal instinct. The breath needs a mind to embrace the universe. We cannot give that, said the fathers. I never had it, said the spirit of the earth. The form will be consumed were I to give it mine, said the great solar fire. Nascent man remained an empty, senseless Bhuta. Thus have the boneless given life to those who became later men with bones in the third race. As a full explanation is found in stanza 5, read paragraph A. A few remarks will now suffice. The father of primitive physical man, or of his body, is the vital electric principle residing in the sun. The moon is its mother because of that mysterious power in the moon which has as decided an influence upon human gestation and generation which it regulates as it has on the growth of plants and animals. The wind, or ether, standing in this case for the agent of transmission by which those influences are carried down from the two luminaries and diffused upon earth, is referred to as the nurse, while spiritual fire alone makes a man a divine and perfect entity. Now, what is that spiritual fire? In alchemy it's hydrogen in general, while in esoteric actuality it is the emanation or the ray which proceeds from its noumenon, the dhyan of the first element. Hydrogen is a gas only on our terrestrial plane. But even in chemistry, hydrogen would be the only existing form of matter in our sense of the term, and is very nearly allied to protyle, which is our liam. Note, see Genesis of the Elements by Professor W. Crookes, page 21. End of note. It is the father and generator, so to say, or rather the upadi, basis, of both air and water, and is fire, air, and water, in fact, one under three aspects, hence the chemical and alchemical trinity. In the world of manifestation of matter, it is the objective symbol and the material emanation from the subjective and purely spiritual entitative being into the region of noumena. Well might Godfrey Higgins have compared hydrogen to and even identified it with the tuon, the one of the Greeks. For, as he remarks, hydrogen is not water, though it generates it. Hydrogen is not fire, though it manifests or creates it. Nor is it air, though air may be regarded as a product of the union of water and fire, since hydrogen is found in the aqueous element of the atmosphere. It is 3 in 1. If one studies comparative theogony, it is easy to find that the secret of these fires was taught in the mysteries of every ancient people, preeminently in Samothrace. There is not the smallest doubt that the Kabeiri, the most arcane of all the ancient deities, gods and men, great deities and titans, are identical with the Kumaras and Rudras headed by Kartikeya, a Kumara also. This is quite evident even exoterically, and these Hindu deities were, like the Kabeiri, the personified sacred fires of the most occult powers of nature. The several branches of the Aryan race, the Asiatic and European, the Hindu and the Greek, did their best to conceal their true nature, if not their importance. As in the case of the Kumaras, the number of Kabeiri is uncertain. Some say that there were 3 or 4 only, others say 7. Ascieros, Achiokersus, and Camillus may very well stand for the alter egos of the 4 Kumaras, Sanat Kumara, Sananda, Sanaka, and Sanatana. The former deities, whose reputed father was Vulcan, were often confounded with the Dioscuri, Corybantes, Anakes, etc., just as the Kumara, whose reputed father is Brahma, or rather the flame of his wrath, which prompted him to perform the ninth or Kumara creation, resulting in Rudra, or Nila Lohita, Shiva, and the Kumaras, were confounded with the Asuras, the Rudras, and the Pitris, for the simple reason that they are all one, that is, correlative forces and fires. There is no space to describe these fires and their real meaning here, though we may attempt to do so if the third and fourth volumes of this work are ever published. Meanwhile, a few more explanations may be added. The foregoing are all mysteries which must be left to the personal intuition of the student for solution rather than described. If you would learn something of the secret of the fires, let him turn to certain works of the alchemists, who very correctly connect fire with every element as do the occultists. The reader must remember that the ancients considered religion and the natural sciences, along with philosophy, to be closely and inseparably linked together. Aesculapius was the son of Apollo, the son of fire of life, at once Helios, Pytheus, and the god of oracular wisdom. In exoteric legends, as much as in esoteric philosophy, the elements, especially fire, water, and air, are made the progenitors of our five physical senses, and hence are directly connected in an occult way with them. These physical senses pertain even to a lower creation than the one called in the Puranas Pratisarga, or secondary creation. Liquid fire proceeds from indiscrete fire, says an occult axiom. The circle is the thought, the diameter or the line is the word, and their union is life. In the Kabbalah, Bath Kol is the daughter of the divine voice or primordial light, Shekinah. In the Puranas and Hindu exotericism, Vak, the voice, is the female logos of Brahma, a permutation of Aditi, primordial light. And if Bat Kol in Jewish mysticism is an articulate preternatural voice from heaven, revealing to the, quote, chosen people, unquote, the sacred traditions and laws, it is only because Vach was called, before Judaism, the mother of the Vedas, who entered into the rishis and inspired them by her revelations. Just as Bath Kol is said to have inspired the prophets of Israel and the Jewish high priests. And both exist to this day in their respective sacred symbologies, because the ancients associated sound of speech with the ether of space, of which sound is the characteristic. Hence fire, water, and air are the primordial cosmic trinity. I am thy thought, thy God, more ancient than the moist principle, the light that radiates within darkness, chaos, and the shining word of God, sound, is the son of the deity. From Pimander, paragraph 6. Note: the opponents of Hinduism may call the above pantheism, polytheism, or anything they may please. If science is not entirely blinded by prejudice, it will see in this account a profound knowledge of natural sciences and physics, as well as of metaphysics and physiology. But to find this out, one has to study the personifications and then convert them into chemical atoms. It will then be found to satisfy both physical and even purely materialistic science, as well as those who see in evolution the work of the great unknown cause in its phenomenal and elusive aspects. End of note. Thus we have to study well the primary creation before we can understand the secondary. The first race had three rudimentary elements in it, and no fire as yet, because with the ancients the evolution of man and the growth and development of his spiritual and physical senses were subordinate to the evolution of the elements on the cosmic plane of this earth. All proceeds from Prabhavapiyaya, the evolution of the creative and sentient principles in the gods, and even of the so-called creative deity himself. This is found in the names and appellations given to Vishnu in exoteric scriptures. As the Protologos, the Orphic, he is called Purvaya, pre-genetic, and then the other names connect him in their descending order more and more with matter. The following order on parallel lines may be found in the evolution of the elements and the senses, or in cosmic terrestrial man or spirit, and mortal physical man. 1. Ether, hearing, sound. 2. Air, touch, sound and touch. 3. Fire or light, sight, sound, touch and color. 4. Water, taste, sound, touch, color and taste. 5. Earth, smell, sound, touch, color, taste and smell. As seen, each element adds to its own characteristics those of its predecessor, as each root race adds the characteristic sense of the preceding race. The same is true in the septenary creation of man, who evolves gradually in 7 stages, and on the same principles as will be shown further on. Thus, while gods or Dhyankochans, devas, proceed from the first cause, which is not Parabrahm, for the latter is the all-cause and cannot be referred to as the first cause, which first cause is called in the Brahmanical books Yagad Yoni, the womb of the world. Mankind emanates from these active agents in cosmos. But men, during the first and the second races, were not physical beings, but merely rudiments of the future man, bhutas, which proceed from bhutadi, origin, or the original place whence sprung the elements. Hence they proceeded with all the rest from prabhavapyaya, the place whence its origination and into which is the resolution of all things, as explained by the commentator. Whence also our physical senses, whence even the highest created deity itself in our philosophy, as one with the universe, whether we call him Brahma, Ishvara or Purusha. He is a manifested deity, hence created, or limited and conditioned. This is easily proven even from the exoteric teachings. After being called the incognizable, eternal Brahma, neuter or abstract, the Pundarikaksha, supreme and imperishable glory, once that instead of Sadaika Rupa, changeless or immutable nature, he is addressed as Ekanka Rupa, both single and manifold. He, the cause, becomes merged with his own effects, and his names, if placed in esoteric order, show the following descending scale. 1. Mahapurusha or Paramatman, Supreme Spirit. 2. Atman or Purvaya, Protologos, the living spirit of nature. 3. Indriyatman or Rishikesa, spiritual or intellectual soul, one with the senses. 5. Bhutatman, the living or life soul. 6. Kshetrayana, embodied soul of the universe of spirit and matter. 7. Prantidarashnata, false perception, that is, material universe. The last name means something perceived or conceived of owing to false and erroneous apprehension as a material form, but in fact only Maya, illusion, as all is in our physical universe. It is in strict analogy with its attributes in both the spiritual and material worlds that the evolution of the Dhyankogenic essences takes place, the characteristics of the latter being reflected in their turn in man collectively and in each of his principles, every one of which contains in itself, in the same progressive order, a portion of their various, quote, fires, unquote, and elements. Next chapter is Stanza 5, the evolution of the second race.